Let's have a look at the items and powers that are available for Zarya in Overwatch 2 Stadium. In this series of videos, I'm highlighting some heroes and taking a look at their unique items and powers in Overwatch 2 Stadium. Today we're taking a look at Zarya. And we're back in the armory on the preview server. And these are all of Zarya's abilities for weapon ability, survival, and power. And we're going to start out with her hero abilities in the weapon tab. There's actually 3 in total. The first one is called a hybrid battery. 5% weapon power and energy cannot be reduced below 20. So let's apply that one and get ourselves some charge with the help of these nice guys. Maybe we need something bigger. Ah, we'll do it. So now we're at 63 charge. And of course it will slowly drop. But as you can tell, it won't drop below 20. Which in theory is good at the start of a match. But once you're kind of in the middle of the fight, that 20 will matter no more pretty quickly. The next one is called Light Launcher. 15% weapon power. Consecutive particle cannon secondary fire shots consume 20% less ammo. Up to 60 for your current magazine. So, let's have a look. Usually my secondary fire uses about 25. 4 shots and we're out. But now we have the item equipped, and we're going to see that the first one is still going to be 25. But as we keep shooting, that number is going to get halved every single time, until we hit the 60%. So let's have a look. So that's 25, that's 20, that's 15, that's 10, and that kind of sticks to 11. Okay, next one. Bigger beam. 10% weapon power. Particle cannon's primary fire range is increased by 20%. So let's look without the item, where we end up somewhere around the 15 meter mark. But then we equip that item, we actually can step back a little bit and see. There we go. So in other words, we get about 3 meters extra. Okay, we're moving on to the ability tab. We have 3 hero items to look at. Beyond barrier, 10% ability power and 20% projected barrier range. So that is basically the bubble that you put on an ally. You can tell by the little blue indicator that appears where the range actually is. So this is too far. This works without the item. But in case we actually put the item on there, we can get all the way up here, which is a nice extra bit of distance. It's not dramatical, but you know, it can help out. The second one is called Link's data drive. In case you're not familiar with Links, they are that Omnic that helps them out in one of the comics, Link 17. It's kind of nice to see that reference. 25 health, 50% ability power, and casting projected barrier on an ally refunds 20% of your barrier cooldown. In normal circumstance, put a bubble on someone else, you can put a bubble on yourself. You got about 8 seconds of cooldown that is running. But in case we get help from Links, that cooldown is only 6 seconds. Now the next item is also kind of tied into that. Superconductor, 25 health, 50% ability power, but 50% barrier duration. Let me show you what that looks like. On the friendly and on myself, the barriers last a lot longer, which kind of closes down the gap with the cooldown. Since that cooldown will start when you cast the actual bubble. So if we combine both of those, both the superconductor and Link's data drive, you only got a small gap where people are not bubbled. But you need to be careful because the bubbles will recharge one by one. The 2 charges will come back one by one. Alright, that was the ability tab. Over to the survival tab with another 3 of these hero items. The first one is called Blastproof Boots. 25 health, 5% move speed. Particle cannon's secondary fire. Self-knockback is increased by 100% and no longer damages yourself, which just becomes a mode of transport at this point. Actually, for this one, I'm going to switch to third person. Some Zarya players have made this into an art. I definitely did not. The second one is called Jumper Cables. 25 shields, 5% ability power. After using a barrier, start regenerating shields instantly. So this is what it normally looks like. We're going to take some damage. You see a shield depleting. We're going to wait till it's all gone. There we go. Because of the barrier, everything comes back slowly, but it takes a while for everything to start recharging. However, if we equip the jumper cables, you can see that it instantly starts regenerating the shield, and then later on the health will kick in. And the last item is a protein shake, 25 health, 15% melee damage. While particle barrier is active, become unstoppable and quick melee knocks back enemies. As you can tell, that works pretty well. But it only works with your own barrier, so if you have your own barrier up, you can go all melee on them. That's kind of a nice item. Alright, but those were all of the items. Let's have a look at the powers. And the first one is called No Limits. Maximum energy increased to 150. The energy always decays above 100 energy at 150 faster rate, which means you can go to 150, but it will drop back to 100 pretty fast. However, I found this to be pretty strong. It is kind of hard to show in this setting because I can't take enough damage to get to 150. But once you get to 150, she burns through everything. And if people keep shooting her, she'll stay up there. The second one is called Particle Accelerator. Gain 15% attack speed for particle cannon's secondary fire. After using an ability, quadruple this bonus for 5 seconds. So, that is the speed of the secondary fire under normal circumstances. 15% faster looks something like this. Now, if we use our barrier, that actually becomes a little more quickly. And that can be a barrier on myself, a barrier on one of my allies, or it could be my grav. The speed will go up substantially, which, as you can tell, comes in pretty handy. The next one is called Piercing Beam. Above 80 energy, particle cannon's primary fire will pierce enemies. In other words, your beam will just kind of continue traveling towards whoever else it can hit within the range. Again, kind of hard to show since I can't even get to 80 energy in this safe setting, so to call it. But you can imagine what that will look like. Number 4 is pre-workout. Gain weapon lifesteal and ability lifesteal equal to 20% of energy. In other words, how higher your energy will be, the more you'll heal yourself, both through your abilities and your weapon. That's not bad. Next up, barrier benefits. When barriers expire, grant overhealth equal to 50% of the remaining barrier health to the target for 3 seconds. That is something we can show. So our friendly bot right there gets a bubble. The bubble doesn't take that many shots, so he get overhealth. But yeah, at some point that disappears. That's how overhealth works. But it gives you a little more space for the supports to kind of heal anybody up that you should have bubbled. Containment Shield. Barrier heals 25 life, increased by energy and grants 20% move speed while active. So basically, barrier just becomes a heal, and it also helps them to move a little faster, which is hard to see in this case because these guys are lazy, man. They don't move. They just stand there. But you can see the health bump up. Now, this is at 0 energy. As you can imagine, as I take more shots and I'm at 40 energy right there, you can see that the jump is up a little higher. Next one, Fission Field. Projectile barrier also applies to one additional ally within 10 meters, but has 20% reduced duration. These guys are going to love that. There you go. Bubbles for both. Didn't help them though. You can imagine that comes in pretty handy, and it definitely helps with the charge. I actually made it to 80. That's interesting. But to come back to the one where they get you over 150, look at that, 150. And it decays pretty fast, but that beam just burns through everything with a lot of speed. Okay, let me show you. It is kind of hard to show off because the range on her beam is so small, but we're at 100. And we basically kill both of them at the same time because it just pierced through. It also shows how potent this 150 is. Look at that. And how strong that extra bubble is. If you bubble 2 people at the same time and they get a lot of damage thrown in there, you're going to get your charge pretty fast. Anyways, let's remove all of these. Here to spot you. Projectile barrier pulls you to the targeted ally and heals you for 15% of max life over 3 seconds. Let's see what that looks like. So basically you get a bit of a teleport. And that teleport will actually heal you. I feel like that is kind of like the thing in Marvel Rivals. Yeah, very similar. Life Lift. 50% particle barrier size. Increased particle barrier held by 100% of the bonus max life. Let's see what that looks like. That only works on my own barrier, but look at that. That is a huge barrier. I think you can actually protect other people with that. It's kind of like a little Winston barrier. Major Flex. Barrier knocks back and deals 25 damage. Increased by energy to enemies within 5 meters every 1 second. In other words, if you have that 150 energy, that we talked about earlier, by getting the 2 barriers up, you're going to do a shit ton of damage every 1 second. And anybody that you put a barrier on is going to be in the same boat. Let's get our old friend out here again and get some huge charge going. You can see the aura already, in which it actually does the damage. I'm going to wait till I have a full recharge. That actually is pretty badass. That is really good. I'm starting to see some really strong combinations. Volskaya Vortex. After a barrier is cast, Particle Cannon's next secondary fire spawns a slowing vortex that deals 100 damage over 2 seconds. So you put a barrier up, That is kind of insane. That is a lot of damage. I see some options. That is pretty strong. Up till now, I wasn't too impressed with anything Zarya was doing, but oh god. All right, the last one, Graviton Anomaly. 25 ultimate cost reduction on Graviton Surge, and Graviton Surge base damage is increased to 30 and increased by energy, but has a 50% reduced duration. Just to give you an idea, this is what a normal Grav looks like in duration and damage. And now we're going to equip the Anomaly. There's a lot more damage, it just doesn't last that long. I don't know. I think if you combine it with something else, like let's say Volskaya Vortex, for instance. Yeah, then you're cooking. But that was it for Zarya. Tell me, what combo of powers and items would you use for Zarya? Let me know in the comments. For now, however, that was it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It always helps me out. I also want to thank my patrons and YouTube members. You too can become a member over on patreon.com/theomnicpost and right here on YouTube to unlock exclusive rewards. If you have a few minutes left, maybe check out one of my other videos. But above all, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.